It's presented in the agenda.
We actually have one small minute before 9. I told you a little early just to make sure you could find it. Sorry.
Okay.
One more time.
Now it dropped. Just a second.
Thank you. The Board of Commissioners meeting is now called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham?
Here.
Matas Castillo? Here. McDonough?
Here.
McGuire?
Here.
Ortega? Reinhardt?
Here.
Carter?
Here. Thank you very much. Commissioner Fretham, would you please lead the Pledge of Allegiance for us while we all mute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. The agenda of the December 1st meeting is before you. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you for the motion and the second. Are there any comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham?
Aye.
Matas Castillo?
Aye.
McDonough?
Aye.
McGuire?
Aye.
Ortega?
Aye.
Reinhardt?
Aye.
Carter?
Aye. Thank you. The agenda for our meeting has passed, and the minutes from our November 24th meeting are before you.
I'll move it, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you. Are there any comments or discussion on the minutes? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham?
Aye.
Matas Castillo?
Aye.
McDonough?
Aye.
McGuire?
Aye.
Ortega?
Aye.
Reinhardt?
Aye.
Carter?
Aye. The minutes of November 24th are passed, and I will turn to the county manager for our COVID update today. County Manager O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Good morning. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy County Manager and Public Health Director Kathy Hedin to get us started.
Thank you, County Manager O'Connor. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Today, Dr. Ogawa is joining us to talk about COVID-19 vaccines. But first, I just want to give you a short situation update. And again, we're not going to the dashboard today, but you can go there by visiting www.ramseycounty.us/COVID and find all information about COVID-19 here in Ramsey County. In Minnesota, 318,763 people have been confirmed positive since the start of this pandemic. There have been 16,791 people hospitalized to date and 3,779 people who have been in the ICU. Unfortunately, across the state, we have lost 3,593 people to COVID-19. Yesterday, the state reported 5,801 positive cases with an additional 15 deaths. We do continue to see high rates of positives across our state and in Ramsey County. So we continue to make sure that we're promoting messages around masking, social distancing, staying 6 feet away. Make sure you have that mask on when you're in public, and if you're feeling sick, you remain home, as well as stay home if you've been exposed to somebody with COVID and get a test. In Ramsey County, 28,587 people have been confirmed positive to date. And unfortunately, we've lost 500 people to COVID in the county. Yesterday, Ramsey County had 466 new cases. Again, those remain high. Just a quick reminder about testing. Saliva testing is still available across the metro. You can go to Roy Wilkins Auditorium at the St. Paul River Center to get tested. Public Health also continues to offer nasal swab tests at the Mexican Consulate tomorrow, December 2nd, and December 16th, both from 2 to 6 p.m. I will now turn it over to Dr. Ogawa. I know that you've all been hearing about COVID vaccines and a lot of information. It's coming at us. It's a bit confusing. So she is here to help us better understand what the vaccines mean, when they might be available, and what to do and when to do it when vaccines will be available for all of us. Dr. Ogawa.
Thank you, Deputy County Manager Hedin, and Madam Chair and members of the board. Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to step up to the front. I put together just 9 slides, so bear with me. Tried to keep it under 10, and I'm going to do my best to speak quickly so that we have time for questions as well.
Hopefully, there we go. Thank you.
There
and
we go.
Did not see Dr. Ogawa. Thanks.
So I did want to talk briefly about what the 3 phases of clinical trials that all vaccines must go through. Now, this is where this begins after all of the research and development, any animal studies or anything along those lines occurs. Phase 1 is usually very small numbers, anywhere from 20 to 100 total healthy volunteers. I mention this because the beginning studies are done on young, healthy individuals. There's not always gender balance. There's not much balance of any kind. This is really primarily focused on safety, and they look at various dose sizes and just monitor for side effects. Occasionally, when we want to speed things up, they will look a little bit at how effective the vaccine may be, but not much. And again, very small numbers. Phase 2 clinical trials focus on more like a few hundred individuals. This is when we continue to monitor side effects. We also begin to directly monitor immune responses related to those doses that were looked at prior to this. This is also when, as you begin to get more volunteers, you hope that the population begins to represent a little bit more of the target population. Phase 3 clinical trials. And this is where some of our vaccines are right now, and actually most of our vaccines that I'm going to be, or all of the vaccines that I'm going to be talking about are. Phase 3 trials focus on thousands of volunteers. This is also where it gets a little bit more difficult because those volunteers are split into 2 groups, those who receive the vaccine and those who receive a placebo. We still monitor the side effects and we compare them specifically from placebo to actual vaccine. So sometimes the placebo is either just a shot of saline or sometimes it's a previous vaccine that we know people have been exposed to before. This is also when we monitor for specific immune responses in those who have received the vaccine. And then we follow both of these groups along to see who gets the actual infection and who is actually protected. There are some what we call challenge studies where we actually vaccinate individuals and then we directly expose them to the virus. But that's not what these studies that's not the phase 3 studies that we're doing with 4 vaccines right now in the US. There's lots of ethical questions that come up with challenge studies, and we feel that it's much safer and much more ethical to let people just be exposed in a natural way. This is also why, though, when we're doing those phase 3 trials, we look for individuals who may be at a higher risk to get the infection, because we need to get to a certain number of cases before true efficacy can be calculated. So these are the 4 vaccines that are currently undergoing phase 3 trials. I listed them in alphabetical order on purpose. So AstraZeneca, University of Oxford, Johnson & Johnson, Janssen, Moderna, and Pfizer. These are the 4 vaccines that will be, excuse me, will be applying for emergency use authorization. Pfizer actually has already requested, so I actually didn't completely update these as of the last 48 hours, but it's changing very rapidly. You'll hear a lot about emergency use authorization. I did not put up a slide because it's a 24-page document. Basically, what emergency use authorization means is that the vaccine can be released as soon as certain statutory requirements are met by the maker. And that's the 24-page form. Essentially, the FDA has outlined basic efficacy, length of time of monitoring from 7 days for short-term side effects to actually 6 months for long-term effect. And so that's why also the studies are taking a little bit longer than anyone would expect, or well, actually, they're much shorter than what we would normally see, but longer than what people would like. The next 2 slides describe, this is where I get very technical. The next 2 slides describe the way the vaccines are eliciting a immune response in the person who receives the vaccine. And they're pretty pictures, because you have to have pretty pictures. So the viral vector vaccines are what we know the best. This is what we know in terms of influenza and other vaccines. A part of the coronavirus, that's the orange part, sorry, right here, a part of the coronavirus's genome is spliced into a different virus. And then that virus doesn't usually cause disease in humans on its own. That's then injected into the individual. That virus replicates itself inside. That's what causes disease in humans in general. And when the immune system picks up that virus, it creates antibodies to the coronavirus spike protein. And so when the individual sees the actual coronavirus, those antibodies are already programmed to kill it or neutralize it. The newer vaccines are the messenger RNA vaccines. This is where a segment of the message that codes for the spike protein is embedded actually in a fatty coat. It's not in another virus. It's not in a cell. It is injected into the body, and our own cells pick up that messenger RNA and transcribe it into the proteins. And then the proteins are released, recognized by the immune system as foreign, and then antibodies are created. I'm just going to comment briefly. Messenger RNA vaccines are new. There is no current FDA-approved vaccine that is a messenger RNA vaccine. So these will be the first. There is a lot of discussion about messenger RNA vaccines because of that. They have been studied for years. They've been studied in different settings, like for flu, like for Zika, like even for cancers. This is a new way of us training our immune system to take care of problems. The other thing that I usually point out at this point is that it's not a DNA virus. It doesn't embed itself in our own nucleuses. It's one of the things that we hear a lot. And messenger RNA never actually enters the nucleus where our DNA is. It's just a pattern for our cell to follow to make the protein. So, this is the one that I actually didn't completely update, so I apologize. But so the vaccines that have early phase 3 results are the Moderna vaccine. There's over 30,000 volunteers worldwide. Of those 30,000, there were 95 confirmed cases of COVID. 90 of those cases were in the placebo, and only five were in those who had received the vaccine, which is why Moderna can claim 95% effective. Pfizer had 43,000 volunteers with, actually now there's been 170 confirmed cases of COVID. And because there's been 170, they can actually now change their effectiveness from 90 to 95%. So that's why Pfizer now has enough data to actually apply for the emergency use authorization. I should back up really quick. Sorry, I forgot to mention. The Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca are the viral vector vaccines, and the Moderna and the Pfizer are the messenger RNA vaccines. The phase 3 trials without data yet are those that are the viral vaccines. Viral vaccines actually take longer to create, and so that's also why we probably are a little bit farther behind on these two studies. It's also interesting, the phase 3 trials are the vaccines that are in viral vectors are happening here in Minnesota. AstraZeneca, Oxford is the one that Health Partners is a US site for, and it's looking for about 1,500 volunteers. Johnson & Johnson is
Hi, Ling, how are you?
utilizing.
I am too, thinking.
I'm sorry. We need someone to mute.
I'm not saying they're
We need someone to mute.
They're the
Thank you very
board,
much.
not the CDC board, but
Excuse me.
Somebody probably asked for it.
Could someone please make certain there is a mute? Thank you. I still believe that we have too much noise in our set. Thank you.
Luckily, I have 4 kids, so that's very common in our house right now. Between distance learning and Disney Plus. The phase 3 trials, I was mentioning Johnson & Johnson Janssen is, Alina is a site for that study as well. Both of these studies, the other piece that you probably will recognize is that both of these studies were halted earlier because of reports of serious adverse events. So during phase 3 trials, I mentioned that we follow for adverse effects, side effects, things along those lines. There are, and certain things are called sentinel events that stop a study. The AstraZeneca was halted because of a transverse myelitis, which is an inflammation of the spinal cord, causing paralysis in a person. And it was actually the second person that had happened to in that study. The first person was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, so they felt that it was not related to the vaccine at all. And the second person also completely recovered, and it did not seem to be connected to the vaccine. So that's why the study was started again. And then the Johnson & Johnson was stopped because a 20-year-old in Brazil had a cerebral hemorrhage, which is quite unusual for a 20-year-old, but they also felt that it was not related to the vaccine. Johnson & Johnson is different than the other vaccines in that it is a single-dose vaccine. And the messenger RNA vaccines are the ones that have to be kept at lower temperatures. So those are the ultra cold, because the messenger RNA is not as stable as a virus is. And so they have to be kept ultra cold. However, the packaging and the way that they're set up, they do feel, the CDC and World Health Organization feel that they'll be able to be transported and given even without a deep cold chain. So I think that's it. And I think I stayed under my time with enough time for questions. I'm sure there won't be any.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, we don't have any additional updates this morning. We wanted to focus on the vaccine update and take any questions that you might have. And so Kathy and I and Dr. Ogawa are here for questions.
Should I come back?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the update. My apologies. My internet blipped and I was out for a few moments. I'm going to call on those who have their hands raised for questions, starting with Commissioner McDonough, followed by Commissioner Fretham. Commissioner?
Thanks, Chair Carter. Question for Dr. Ogawa. You talked about the worldwide studies and the World Health Organization be a part of these studies. I'm just wondering, what are the differences or nuances here as we kind of see how things are playing out in like the UK or Asia or Canada? Are they using the same viruses and their processes are a little different where they might get out quicker or slower? Or are they actually using different vaccines that may produce different results? Are we seeing the same vaccines of the 4 companies worldwide and the processes of getting them out are different? Or are we seeing different vaccines in different countries because of how they operate or what they allow?
Commissioner McDonough, that's a great question. The 4 major manufacturers that I spoke of, the Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson, they are using the exact same vaccine in all of their studies. And in fact, what's interesting is they're very particular about not just the vaccine that they're using, but the methodology that's happening. And so there's been some difficulties recently. That's the other piece that you might have read about AstraZeneca's initial data, because in a couple of their sites, they did not follow the actual dosing that was supposed to happen. But for those 4, they are using the exact same vaccine in all of their studies, worldwide and in the US. However, China, Russia, North Korea, a few of the other countries have worked independent and utilized different viruses and different methods of vaccine. The other thing that's different in other countries is that a few of them chose to do mass vaccination before the initial phase 3 trials were done, finished. And so that's the other piece. I mentioned for phase 3 trials, they usually want to see at least 2 to 6 months of data. And so they shortened that phase and then mass vaccinated individuals. So we will see data coming out of those vaccine studies. It's a little bit difficult to interpret it. A little bit harder to interpret it. I'll just put it that way.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fretham and then Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Fretham.
Thank you, Chair Carter. Dr. Ogawa, you mentioned that in the phase 3 trials that the volunteers tend to be more representative of the population. I'm just wondering, knowing that women tend to develop higher antibody responses to vaccines and are more frequently having severe adverse reactions, is the data reported sex separated so that we can know if women are more at risk, especially because we also know that women disproportionately represent those frontline workers who are likely to be prioritized first for vaccines?
All of the data will be broken down ultimately into every which way that we want it to be in many ways. But gender is clearly one of those that we look at. Also, racial and ethnic breakdown has also been looked at as well. Specifically, the Moderna released some of its data that showed, or actually Pfizer released some of its data, that showed that 42% and 42% globally and 30% US patients were racially and ethnically diverse. And then 41% and 45% respectively were over the age of 56, between 56 and 85. Because so Pfizer, Moderna, all of these companies have not released all of their data, citing privacy. And so I have not seen the gender breakdown. I know that they were striving, though, to recruit with certain numbers in mind. Yeah. There are also pregnancy studies there are also studies independent of these main phase 3 that are taking place in women who are pregnant as well. And so we'll have some data from there ultimately too.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, I'm sorry, I lost track. I think the next is Commissioner Mattis Castillo. Or next, Commissioner McGuire. Thank you.
It's okay. I'll go next, but I'm happy to have one of my colleagues. But okay. Thank you, Dr. Ogawa. It is so great to hear you, and I was fortunate to be able to hear your town hall meeting with the public. You were really articulate and telling you are able to describe really complicated things in a way that I think people can understand. So I really appreciate that, and I understand it's your background, so we're really benefiting from your background in this field. So with that, I think one of the big questions we all get asked, and I'm sure you get asked too, is people who even are okay with vaccines are wondering if this is still too fast of a timeline, if the vaccine will still be safe, and when it's let out, I think hopefully people's fears of it being a political thing are going to be going away by then. And has this been a safe study? I mean, will the vaccine be good for people to take? And then of course, when might that be? And I know it's sort of a moving target, but just those are the questions that I get asked.
I get asked those regularly, Commissioner McGuire as well, and Deputy County Manager Hadeen likes to give them to me regularly. So I'm gonna talk about the safety first. While the FDA has put this on the fast track for certification and emergency use authorization, all of the same requirements that we would see for a vaccine previously are still being followed. I mentioned that we've learned a lot about vaccination over the last 20 to 30 years, a very lot. That's not very medical, but a lot. And we've been able to harness that information and make this move faster. Could we have done that sooner? Maybe. But we have done the same safety and efficacy studies, and that includes the placebo control that I do trust. The numbers that we've reached in terms of disseminating this vaccine are also very large. They've been done in a safe manner. And so I do trust in the safety of this vaccine. That's my own personal opinion, but it was rushed. So I understand people's caution. I think that as it's released and we have more data, we will continue to get more information about this. No vaccine is going to be 100%. We recognize that. Flu vaccine is not 100%. The goal, though, is to reduce deaths, morbidity, and mortality associated with this virus, and we know that those numbers are great and huge. And everything in medicine is a balance of that, a risk and a benefit. And as a public health medical director now, especially, even more than when I was a private clinician, it's about protecting the most people in the most safe manner. We know the safest way to protect people is to keep them in their own home and away from others right now. But we know that we also can't do that forever. And the next best way to protect individuals against infectious disease is to vaccinate them if available. And so that will be the next step in the safest way to protect the most people.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, if I could add, I think the difficulty of this and what we have to do as a public health department is figure out how to message that, exactly what Dr. Ogawa said, in a way that allows people whose families and ancestors have been traumatized by the medical field and by the public health field. And so we do have some work to do, and we'll do it with our community liaisons, we'll do it with racial equity and community engagement response team, and people who are in community who are ready to provide positive messages and clear and transparent messages about vaccines and how important they are. But we know that it's an important message. That's a difficult message because many people, specifically Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, have been led the wrong way, have been treated wrong, have been experimented on, and so this is so important. And like Dr. Ogawa said, it's about saving lives, and it will save lives, and that is very important. But we have to be very careful and very transparent about how we communicate this vaccine and the messages that we have.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate that, Director Hadeen and Dr. Ogawa. That I agree. I think it's really important that messaging is transparent and that we really work with all of our communities. So I really appreciate that. And if I could ask one more question, Madam Chair, it goes sort of along with this. So in these trials, this would be Dr. Ogawa, in these trials, how long do they usually go before? And I'm wondering about long-term side effects. We just won't know that, right? I mean, we, as you said, protecting the most people in the most safe manner, and we don't know maybe what long-term effects may be, but we just in all of science hope that they're not bad or something. So can you just talk a little bit about those long-term effects?
Yep, that's actually. Commissioner McGuire, that's what we hope. They're not bad, for real. I know that sounds a little bit flippant, but it is real. What we do know also is that we have decades of other viral vaccines, other messenger RNA vaccines as well, that do look at longer term effects having used the same methodology. But it's true, we don't have the data on these. Animal models, we probably have a little less than a year of data, or around a year probably. And animal models, though, are not human models. And so we just can't know until there's more time. That is the statutory change that emergency use addresses too, is that there's actually longer ongoing data being gathered around these vaccines. There will be a much easier way for providers of the vaccine to document adverse reactions so that people can be aware of that quicker as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call on Commissioner Matas-Castillo, then Commissioner Reinhardt, and back to Commissioner Quintana. Commissioner Matas-Castillo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we're not really able to hear you very well, just so that you know, you're very, very quiet. Thank you, Dr. Otogawa. I have to tell you, it's fascinating listening to you, and you're doing a great job. I'm actually getting messages from constituents who are watching and are saying you're doing a great job. So I just wanted to share that. I actually got a text from someone with a question, so I just thought I would read it. And they just wanted to know about morbidity and the difference between morbidity if you take the vaccine versus if you don't take the vaccine. And really, how do we build education around this so we get full participation and cooperation as it rolls out to help all of us. So thank you.
Yeah, so morbidity is a lot harder to talk about than mortality. Mortality is an easy endpoint, I hate to say, but it's sort of a yes or a no. Morbidity is more difficult because morbidity implies a relatively serious outcome, but not defined. And so that may be, like I mentioned before, the person who had the stroke or the individual who had the transverse myelitis. And around morbidity, it's difficult because each event may be a little bit different. So you can count how many strokes people have, or you can count how many transverse myelitis, but you can't necessarily make a giant decision about morbidity associated with that. So it's a little bit more difficult. The other thing about morbidity is that that's usually a longer term study as well, and a look at longer term. And so what we do know is that if you get the virus now, we are seeing more incidences of what people are calling the long haulers, or the people who have morbidity associated with the virus itself, right? And so we do believe if we can prevent individuals from even getting the virus, we will also reduce that morbidity associated with it. I think I mentioned, but I may not have, in the Pfizer study, those who received the vaccine, none of them had the severe hospitalized case. So that also is a morbidity reduction associated with the virus itself. And so I do feel confident that not having the virus is one of the best ways to reduce the morbidity associated with the virus. We don't know yet, and I can't comment yet about any morbidity associated with the vaccine itself, admittedly. Plus, I don't get all that data, unfortunately, not yet. Eventually, I'll get all of it, but not yet.
Thank you. We're so lucky to have you and for your information to share with us and our community. Madam Chair, I have a question unrelated to this particular topic, more to the COVID, so I'll wait and circle back around so others can stay on this topic.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Castillo. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a lot of talk also about the differences between a vaccine and the 4 that are up here right now, or that are going through the trials right now, and treatment. I know, and I can't remember what the name of it is, I know it's controversial, but there's a treatment that has been talked about in Congress. So can you talk a little bit about the differences? Because I think we're being bombarded with so much information that it's difficult to know when they talk about effectiveness, the vaccines and the actual treatment when someone gets the virus.
Yeah, so when I usually try and make the distinction is about sort of just what you had said earlier, in that a treatment is once a person actually is infected with the virus, then medications and other study materials actually are being used on individuals to help slow either the replication of the virus in the individual or actually treat the effects of having the virus. And so that's the other thing that often is difficult when we talk about treatment after an individual is infected. A number of the treatments that have initially been studied also under emergency use authorization. So that's the other thing that sometimes muddies the water, because we talk about using medications under emergency use authorization as well, is that some of those have been shown not to be as effective as we had initially thought they were going to be. Most of those that have not been shown to be as effective are actually those that initially we thought would slow the replication of the virus in the individual. That's also something that we, as a medical system, have not been very good at doing yet, because viruses, I like to say this, but it's real, are much smarter than we are and have been around a lot longer than we have. And so they have adjusted and adjust faster than we do. And so most of our treatments have not been as good there. The treatments that have actually shown to be the most effective are those that actually stop the progression of the, for lack of a better word, the side effects associated with the virus. So we've talked in the past about the individuals who have been infected and then go on to things like multi-organ failure, overactive immune system that actually causes blood clotting, or the opposite, excess bleeding. And so a number of our treatments have addressed those issues so that we're able to stop the progression to mortality or death. And so there is a breakdown of the treatments, but treatments are only good once you get the infection. And again, we feel like we still don't know what the long-term effects of having that infection, even if we control it, are. And so the idea behind a vaccine is to keep the body from getting that infection in the first place.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to Commissioner.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, I'm sorry, I
Reinhardt?
was on mute when I was trying to ask my second question. So what do we know about the fact that there have been a few cases where someone has gotten it a second time?
Yeah.
So what do we know about that? Because even with the vaccine, I would think that, well, I don't know. I mean,
yep.
Once we get past it, what do we know about that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do know is that we know that once a person makes antibodies, they are protective. We believe, based on the amount of time that we've seen this virus and we've seen people responding to this virus, that actually those antibodies are at a high enough level to protect them for at least 3 months. And so that's why the recommendations are, if somebody has had COVID, has recovered, and is re-exposed to COVID within 3 months, they are considered protected. The reason I say that 3 months is because we just haven't been able to study people long enough to see how long those antibodies last and if they stay at levels that are protective. We do know that there have been people reinfected. And the way that we know sometimes they're reinfected is because they become symptomatic again. Most of the cases that I have read about being reinfected have not led to severe cases, which also makes us believe that there's a bit of an immunity left over. The other difficult part is that we can actually genome sequence the virus that an individual has, and we can look to see if it matches it exactly, or if there's been a genetic mutation that maybe makes the person susceptible to a sort of a new virus, but that's mutated. Most of the data that's coming out right now has not shown a significant mutation that would make the current vaccines not still work. Boy, there were a lot of negatives there. In other words, there has not been a mutation that would affect the vaccines under production right now. However, there has been a mutation, we know, that has made the virus actually replicate probably faster and makes people a little bit more infectious. It has not been shown to make people sicker yet at this point. But so when a person is reinfected We're trying to find that out and find out if it's because their immune system just dropped and they got reinfected with the exact same virus, or if the virus truly has mutated and is now not recognized by the body anymore at all. We have to reach a certain number of cases in order, though, to know, what the effect is, and we just haven't seen that number of cases yet. The other thing is that this is going to be difficult data to get at, because if somebody has a milder case later, they may not even let their provider know, right? Or we may not even know. And so we may not know if people are reinfected again as well. So continue to monitor and continue to report out, but it's difficult to know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was coming back to Commissioner McDonough. I no longer see your hand. And so I'm going to go on to Commissioner Matas-Castillo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question about an unrelated topic, but COVID. And so this morning, many constituents saw on the news that there was a story about the use of the morgue facility for the state. And I know that our team has been working really hard on management of those, and Judd Freed, our emergency manager, is on the line. And so I just wondered if we could get a current update in Ramsey County, because I feel like we're in a good place, and give them the opportunity to share what we're doing here in Ramsey County. And so if we could hear from Judd.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. How are you today? So this weekend, like all good Thanksgivings, went a little bit south. Instead of having family around the table to discuss politics, I got a call from the Department of Health that one of our local funeral providers was reporting being out of space to store deceased individuals. This led to a lot of concern about whether the state was going to be opening up the what they're calling the 1415 building, which is their warehouse and mass morgue, and what the impact would be. And to be absolutely honest, the call caught us a little bit unprepared, because all of our data dashboard said that we were actually in pretty good shape. Good news, we're in pretty good shape. The individual was concerned about a potential rather than something that was reality. Working with the mortuary sciences folks at the Department of Health, the provider was able to rectify their situation, come to grips with his own needs. And so currently right now, our providers have more than adequate space. We're at about 40% of our capacity as of yesterday. So things are relatively stable. It did, however, reignite some of the concerns about the 1415 building, which is what the state's referring to their warehouse as. And so a flurry of emails from myself through our county incident management structure, and a lot of conversation, including bright and early this morning with the Director of Homeland Security and Emergency Management for the state of Minnesota. Here's the very simple stuff. One, the building is primarily being used right now as a warehouse for personal protective equipment. That's what it's being used for. That's the only thing being stored there right now, PPE and some vaccination supplies. They did on Monday begin the process, because there is the growing concern about a shortage of space to hold on to bodies after death. So they did begin, out of what is truly an abundance of caution, the process of activating the systems in there to make sure the refrigeration works, make sure they were able to install what they call racking to hold coffins. And as it turned out, in fact, they needed to go back to the drawing board on their racking. So sometime next week, the racking should be in place to use the facility to store coffins, and only if necessary. Right now, there is no scheduled date to do that. There is no demand for it yet. It is an absolute, and again, I talked to Director Kelly this morning, it is an absolute last-ditch measure after all of our private sector and our hospitals have done everything in their power to manage whatever surge we may get. We did have a bad week last week, including our first 3-digit day of fatalities. We are looking at the distinct possibility of a new surge following the Thanksgiving travel. We're leading into Christmas when we will no doubt have travel again. So having this facility ready is a good thing, but unfortunately, the communication on it from some individuals has not been great, and it sounded like they were starting to use the facility or that they were not even going to tell. None of that is true. So I just, welcome the opportunity to say that I've talked with our medical examiner's office for several hours over Thanksgiving weekend, which is, again, a great way to spend Thanksgiving. And our medical examiner's office capacity is fine. We have a surge capacity that's built in. We've already, got the things to handle more fatalities if necessary there. Our hospitals, we're working with them today, as a matter of fact, to make sure that their surge capacity is available, because believe it or not, most hospitals don't have lots of space to hold on to people after they pass away. And then our as I said, our private sector providers of funeral services are right now across the county at roughly 40% capacity. We're working with them to help them find their own solutions. The county is not in the business of being a mortuary, obviously, but we are working to provide them with subject matter expertise, make sure that they're tied into the ME's office and the state if they need to be. The state is taking those steps to get the building ready if necessary. One last thing on the 1415 building is the plans right now are only to bring bodies after they have been prepared. That is, after they've been embalmed. They'll be in caskets, and so there's no biological or medical risk to anyone anywhere nearby from that facility. Even if in the future, things went far beyond our worst possible case scenarios, there is no biological risk. There'll be no procedures being done there. They won't be embalming people there. It is a refrigerated space for holding decedents. And then as soon as there is capacity at the local funeral home to carry out the burial or cremation, that'll happen, and the funeral home will come and pick the casket up from the 1415 building and bring it on its way. It's not a county facility, it's a state facility. It'll serve the entire region. I suppose theoretically it could serve the entire state if that was necessary. It's, I believe, being prepared to hold 20 or 24 caskets. It could be expanded. There are other refrigerated spaces there. And so this is one of those truly, frightening aspects to this whole deal. I mean, I have no compunction in saying that I share the concern of pretty much everybody out there when we hear that we're planning for the possibility of a large number of deaths. And that's the unfortunate reality of all this, is that this is a real virus. It is a real concern. And it would be unfortunate for us to fail to prepare, knowing what we know could potentially happen. But again, no plans to open it on any set date, no need to open it in the near future, but it'll be ready if needed. And I think that's pretty much the information there, Commissioner, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing Judd to give us an update. It is an unfortunate part of the conversation we need to have, but I wanted to make sure the community was clear on what was and wasn't happening for the benefit. And it also just goes to show that all that we've been learning from Dr. Otogawa and public health over the last 9 months is that we can prevent the need to use this facility by doing the right thing of wearing our masks, staying home when we're sick, and getting tested. And so just want to echo and rescore that our public health folks are here to keep us healthy so we don't have to talk about this other unfortunate part of the situation if we don't. So thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Absolutely, and thank you for asking the question. I'm certain that we all were expecting to hear more about that given the news this weekend, and are thankful that we have experts such as Judd Fried in emergency management, and also on the public health side, Dr. Gawa, thank you very, very much. And also Deputy and Director Hadeen in public health, we so appreciate that you are sharing with us what is known, and so that we can protect and prepare for what may not be known in coming months as we continue through our COVID response. I want to turn it back to you for closing remarks. Either Dr. Ogawa, Director Hadeen, or County Manager O'Connor.
Madam Chair,
I know you all know.
Madam Chair, thank you for all the questions. We don't have any other remarks here. For people who want to see the data, it continues to be available at ramseycounty.us/coronavirus. You can see all of our information about local and state data. We did not show the dashboard today, but it's still there. We'll give vaccine updates along the way as we go, either from the medical lens of what we're learning or from the community distribution lens of how we're building capacity to break through some of the barriers that Deputy County Manager Hadeen and Dr. Ogawa brought up today. And we will keep you posted regarding any further updates at the 14-15 site per Judd's update today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with the update that we've had, let us close the COVID update portion with a moment of silence for those that have been impacted. Thank you very much. And moving on in our agenda, I'll call on Commissioner Fretham for our administrative items. Commissioner Fretham.
Thank you, Chair Carter. I'd like to move item 3, 2020426, 2-year extension of selected social services and financial assistance services contracts. Item 4, 2020538, Lake Owasso residents application for day training and habilitation services license. Item 5, 2020536, amendment to the agreement with Northeast Youth and Family Services. Item 6, 2020504, agreements with cities and Independent School District 621 for voting equipment and election services. Item 7, 2020537, compensation rate for election judges. Item 8, 2020564, waiver of variable pass-through for the Minnesota Burn Justice Assistance Grants Criminal and Juvenile Justice Intervention Grant Program. And that is it.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you for the motion and for the second. Are there any comments or discussion on the administrative items? Thank you. The entire administrative agenda has been moved and seconded. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham.
Aye.
Mattis Castillo.
Aye.
McDonough.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
Ortega.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Aye.
Carter.
Aye. And thank you. All items on the administrative agenda have passed, and we are moving on to our ordinance procedures, of which there are 4. The first, the 2021 Solid Waste Facility Bond Ordinance, sponsored by Finance. This is to approve the 2021 Solid Waste Facility Bond Ordinance, which sets forth a procedure for issuance of the bonds. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I would move approval.
Second.
Thank you for the motion and second. Any discussion on the item? Please call the roll.
Fretham.
Aye.
Mattis Castillo.
Aye.
McDonough.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
Ortega.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Aye.
Carter.
Aye. Thank you very much. That item passes. approving the 2021 solid waste facility bond ordinance. Item number 10 focuses on the 2021 capital improvement program bond ordinance to approve the 2021 capital improvement bond ordinance, which sets forth a procedure for issuance of the bonds. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you for the motion and second. Any discussion on the item? And will the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Carter,
Aye. Thank you very much. And that item passes as well. Both have been on our agenda previously, and reading those particular bond ordinances and public hearing, and now are approved, both for the solid waste facility bond and the capital improvement program bond. Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to item 11, which is the proposed Housing Stability Department ordinance and waiving the first reading of this proposed Housing Stability Department ordinance. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you for the motion and for the second. Is there any discussion on this item? And will the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Carter,
Aye. Thank you very much. The motion passes. We're moving on to 12, the proposed Housing Stability Department ordinance to set the public hearing date and time regarding the proposed Housing Stability Department ordinance for December 22nd, 2020 at 9 a.m. or as soon as possible thereafter in the council chambers of the Ramsey County Courthouse for the purpose of taking public comments. That is item number 12. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
And a
Second.
second? Thank you very much for the motion and second on the proposed Housing Stability Department to set the date and time for the public hearing for December 22nd. Is there any comment? Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Carter,
Aye, thank you very much. And that item also has passed. We are done with our ordinance procedures, and I'll turn this over then to County Manager O'Connor for County Connections.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. 3 updates for you today. I will start with an update about a partnership and an event happening this evening from 4 to 5:30 in which Workforce Solutions, in partnership with community members and community corrections, will be hearing from stakeholders and young adults as part of the week's activities. And you can see more about the program and what's happening here in the youth and adult employment conversations at ramseycounty.us/level-up, ramseycounty.us/level-up. 56% of jobs young people hold in Ramsey County are in food, service, and retail industries. We know that youth and young adults have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. We're helping them level up all week with virtual events and activities. Tonight is that community conversation that I referenced. And there's a number of individuals who will be a part of that experience, from Matt Haley at Cookie Cart to Sophia Maceda at the YMCA, Paul Nickstad at Job Corps, Caroline Karanja at Hack the Gap, Roy Adams from our own Ramsey County Correctional Department, Melvin Robinson also from our correctional area. This is happening, as I mentioned, in partnership with Workforce Solutions. And as we look at service teams and busting down barriers and silos and then say, how do we work across service teams? It's a great partnership between EGCI, the Economic Growth and Community Investment Team, and the Health and Wellness Service team and the partnership with our community. So really wanted to lift that up and say thanks to everybody who's been a part of putting together Level Up as a week and tonight's event. Two pieces of good news for you. You received an email late last week about a tentative agreement reached with AFSCME after long periods of bargaining, and I want to thank all parties that have been a part of that work together. Looking forward to more in the weeks ahead, but to our labor partners, to the staff who have been a part of the management side of that, these are always challenging and difficult, but to reach a tentative moment of agreement during Thanksgiving week could not come at a better time during such a challenging year. And all parties have come together to be able to make that happen and build momentum. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who is a part of more than 100 hours of time put in over the recent time together to reach that tentative moment. Finally, the biggest piece here of update, and I want to do this one last in case there's any follow-up questions or discussion, but we were able to, I was able to share a note with you on Wednesday night of last week that after reaching an agreement with the state of Minnesota for partnership in the area of homelessness, I'm comfortable getting to say today that as of January 1st, we should be in a spot where we should not have to have people sleeping outside as we head into this winter in the East Metro. And that's a significant moment that has been, quite frankly, in doubt for a long time throughout all of our work together. And I want to thank the county board for their work in this space, all the way to our shelter assistants, community partners, and everybody in between in this organization who have played a role in making that happen. There's a ton here, but a very brief update. Since the beginning of COVID, Ramsey County is a partner in operating a system that involves Union Gospel Mission, Catholic Charities, Higher Ground, the Ramsey County Safe Space. Ramsey County now operates Mary Hall. We've operated hotels. We've opened up Boys Totem Town as a COVID respite site. And even with that, there have been approximately 300 people by our count sleeping outside on any given night, mostly in St. Paul, sometimes into suburban communities in Maplewood and Roseville, Falcon Heights as well. Last week, the City of St. Paul announced a funding and operational partnership, funding with the City of St. Paul and operational with Ramsey County to open up 100 emergency spaces through the end of the year at 2 City of St. Paul locations that will help bridge the gap through some of our time as it comes forward, and those sites opened last week. Bethesda, the mHealth Fairview partnership between Ramsey County and mHealth Fairview, will provide 100 beds of emergency shelter as well for this winter, next year, and the following winter. That is slated to open around mid-December. There are still some approvals that we need to go through, and we are not at the end on that yet. Alongside those 100 beds, it will also open 65 or 68 beds of respite for COVID respite to ensure people have space to recover from symptoms of COVID, which basically doubles the available COVID space that Ramsey County has been operating. This is an important step because right now our COVID respite space has filled up as we've seen a surge in our area. We've gone from single-digit numbers of people experiencing COVID among our homeless population to double-digit numbers to capacity size numbers over the past week. And so the concern was, how would we get to mid-December? Well, the state of Minnesota reached out last week to Ramsey and Hennepin County, and in a partnership, launched 130 more beds of COVID respite that will open across the region and be available through the end of the calendar year. So Hennepin and Ramsey are serving in operational support roles to that work, and in the design side, the state of Minnesota has been the lead funder, and we greatly appreciate that partnership to ensure that the region can meet surge capacity for COVID for individuals experiencing homelessness. And then we'll have Bethesda coming online at the end of that timeline, which ensures that we will continue to have space to serve those in need. Alongside all of that, as we've talked about before, Luther Seminary has stepped up in a partnership to provide somewhere around 75 beds as well to ensure stabilizing homelessness. And that was going to move some of our operations out of hotels where they have been since the beginning of the emergency response period. And in the most exciting final part of the deal to come together at the end of last week, the state of Minnesota has put forward $2.4 million towards allowing us to sustain those hotel operations through this winter. It will allow us to be able to fill that final gap that otherwise would have continued to exist. We simply could not have funded it alone. We have a significant operational lift to be able to ramp up and meet an expanded system by January 1st. And so there may be more conversation with all of you in the weeks ahead. But today we are literally at the point of trying to sign paperwork and connect finance people and get it all done. But as you all know, it's been many meetings over many months and many pleas, and thankfully listening happening on all ends, and people coming together to find solutions. And the idea that we will be into this winter with solutions in front of us to help address people who would otherwise be left outside on the most dangerous nights of the year in Minnesota is an amazing testament to our partnership and our work together. And I want to thank the governor's office, Minnesota Housing Finance, the Department of Human Services, the city of St. Paul, and our leaders across Ramsey County who have said yes to every meeting at every hour of every day to be a part of ensuring that we can make this happen. And that includes all of you who have been on many of those conversations. There's probably more, but I don't know what it is to update at this point. So I'll leave it there and say that's a lot. And it's exciting and it's a good news moment. Oh, the piece I wanted to end on. This also buys us a 4-month window to begin a conversation between January and April about longer term solutions beyond a winter of emergency stopgap solutions. And what that looks like and how we bring together the hundreds of people who have been a part of our conversations and town halls around homelessness is a big question, I think, for all of us. And it's something I'll want to reach out to all of you on and get thoughts on how we organize for this legislative session and beyond. We've been granted a window that we simply have not had since the beginning of this emergency period, at which time now we have a foundation from which to build longer solutions. So thank you for the slightly longer update, Madam Chair. If there's any questions on homelessness or anything else, I would stand for those. I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. That is a remarkable report of work and struggle and coming together in partnership and building relationship to resolve a very, very important area of concern that has been long-term a concern and will continue to be in this space and time where we have this pandemic amongst us. We have the opportunity to bring people inside fully this winter. And that is remarkable. So much appreciation to you, to our leadership, to our staff, to the city and other partners who have been working with us throughout this, and clearly also to the state of Minnesota for the gathering and coming together and the offering and supporting us in this way. I want to look to my participant list. Commissioner Castillo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo my excitement and gratitude for the support, because it has gone a long, grueling process of planning, of meeting, of figuring it out. And this is truly a moment that we should celebrate. It came on the eve of Thanksgiving. It was like, yes. So thank you again. And thank you, Ryan, for your hard work. It is leading a team, it's leading a staff to get us to this point, but you put in extra long hours and leverage personal relationships as well. And we really, really appreciate it. This is truly going to help so many in our community that we cannot be excited enough to do this work. And it gives us a foundation to continue to build as we meet real solutions for the future. And so thank you, County Manager O'Connor. Thank you to all of the fellow commissioners that have helped in this process as well, and to our community, and to the governor and lieutenant governor and Commissioner Ho and Commissioner Harpstead, who really worked on this as well to help us meet these needs. So I just wanted to echo that gratitude and thanks as we move forward.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Commissioner Castillo, and to all on this board for the work that has happened in pushing this up the hill. I'm sorry, somehow I muted again. So with all of that excitement, we're going to move on in our agenda. We've got a lot of work to do yet. Following our updates and committee reports, we intend to go to our Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting, a legislative committee meeting this morning, and then we have a closed meeting also. This afternoon, we'll follow with a workshop on talent attraction, retention, and promotion. And with that said, I am going to turn to commissioners, beginning with Commissioner Matas-Castillo for your board reports. Commissioner Matas-Castillo.
I don't have any, no report today.
Okay, thank you so much. And so I'll go next to Commissioner McDonough.
No report.
All right, Commissioner McGuire.
Well, I'd like to say no report, but I just want to give a couple of highlights of some upcoming things that are coming up. But also, first of all, to give a shout out on the Highway 36 transit study that's being going on right now. Frank Alarcon is our public works guy on that, and just to let you know, there's meetings going on about that, and they're soliciting public input on that transit study. So I'm just happy to see transit work going on there. So just to let you know that the Ramsey County League of Local Governments annual meeting is this Friday between 7:30 and 9. David Schultz will be our speaker there, and I think it's a great meeting for all of us to attend to get an update on what's going on with the Ramsey County League. And we have lots of our cities and school district partners that will be at that meeting. So that's this morning on Zoom, of course. Also, the AMC annual meeting is next week, next Monday. So just to give you a heads up on that, and also our first meeting of the Child Care Policy Action Group will be next week as well. And also, just to put this on your radar for next week, Ramsey County Community Legislative Engagement 101. So this is the first time we're doing a legislative engagement, and that is on Wednesday, December 9th, from 5 to 6. Those are all Zoom meetings, of course. So just wanted to give people a heads up on their calendar. Lots going on. Check the website for all the details on the events that are going on.
Yes, there is a lot. And thank you so much for those updates, Commissioner McGuire. Turning to Commissioner Ortega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we know that at this time of the year, we usually have our holiday celebration at the Union Depot, which includes the European market, the holiday train, the tree lighting, fireworks. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we are doing everything virtual. So starting going to the Ramsey County website, folks could enjoy all of those activities virtually. There'll be entertainment and the holiday tree lighting and the fireworks virtually. But I want to say thank you to the Pinsonolt family. They are the family every year. A family of Ramsey County donates the tree to be lighted in the lawn of the Union Depot. And this year, the Pinsonolt family has donated a tree for our holiday celebration. So I do want to say thank you to the family for all they've done for us for these holidays. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ortega. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say thank you to our staff, the leadership, the commissioners for the second public hearing that we had on our budget last evening. We had to pivot very quickly because of the governor's executive order so that it had to be done virtually. And I think that our staff, everyone came together and made that change quickly. And we tried out a new system as far as connections to folks that were in the audience that I know that we'll be able to perfect and use in upcoming public meetings that we may have where we want to hear testimony. I wanted to point out that we do have answers to the questions, the general questions, as the chair stated last evening, that are on our website. You can watch the video of the full public hearing last night. But we also have on our website great detail of our budget. We are set to approve the budget at no more than what the maximum was set at, which is a 0% levy increase. And I think it's important to note that that does not mean that property taxes stayed the same. It means that we did not increase our levy. And what we had when we did our 2-year budget, which we do in Ramsey County, which is different than many of the other counties, we had slated for 2021 a 4.75% property tax levy increase. And through a lot of hard work, a lot of hard work by our staff and leadership, we were able to bring that to zero. But we do know that that is not sustainable, as we stated last evening. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we do have the property tax levy set at zero, and we will be approving that budget 2 weeks from today, December 15th. And in closing, I'd like to again thank the county board members, the county manager, all of our finance staff, our CFO, Alex Kutza, and I would also like to thank the Vice Chair, Commissioner Trista Matas Castillo, for all the effort that has gone into this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Reinhardt, and a very big thanks to you and also Commissioner Matas Castillo for the work that you put in on the budget preparation as well on behalf of all of us to prepare us for the public hearing. And I will go to Commissioner Fretham.
Thank you, Chair Carter. No updates for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Fretham. And so for my part, I would like to reiterate the thanks to all who prepared us for the public hearing on our budget last night, and including the communications team who had to do some very nimble work to be flexible in this time to prepare us to have the public hearing such as we did online, realizing that during COVID, we have had to exercise the incredible flexibility and knowing how much it took to pivot so quickly to get us to that public hearing. So thank you very, very much to our communications team, to all the commissioners, our staff, and also to the public who also with us accommodated our need to make that change last night. And the public hearing, I thought, did go well. We are learning and we are preparing to be as flexible and nimble as we need to in the future. And so I believe that we are at the bottom of our agenda, although I have misplaced it, yes. And I already did share that following the board meeting, we will have an HRA meeting. We'll take a 10-minute break before the HRA meeting. We will not take very much time at all. We'll go from the HRA meeting to the legislative meeting within a matter of 30 seconds or so. And then we will have our executive, our closed meeting, that is, following the Legislative Committee of the Whole. And so right now it is 10:21. At 10:31, let us return for our HRA meeting. Checking with the county manager, do we have a separate link for the HRA meeting, or I believe we stay on?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, you'll be staying on here and it'll come back at the call of the HRA chair for when the meeting will start.
Thank you very much. And so we'll recess until 10:31. Thank you. No, not recess. I'm calling the board meeting to a close. We're adjourned.